OA Preamble, Overeaters Anonymous, is a fellowship of individuals who, through shared experience, strength, and hope, are recovering from compulsive overeating. We welcome everyone who wants to stop eating compulsively. There are no dues or fees for members. We are self-supporting through our own contributions, neither soliciting nor accepting outside donations. OA is not affiliated with nor any public or private organization, political movement, ideology, or religious doctrine. We take no position on outside issues. Our primary purpose is to abstain from compulsive eating and compulsive food behaviors, and to carry the message of recovery through the 12 steps of OA to those who still suffer. How our meeting works. At this meeting, we follow a rotating format. On the second week of the month is a recovered OA speaker who will be speaking on the topic of their choosing for 30 minutes. There will be a follow-up Q&A segment for 15 minutes where fellows are welcome to ask any questions of our speaker which is related to the topic in question. And that's this week, it's speaker week. So disclaimer, this meeting will be recorded by audio only, and you will see a recording sign at the top of your screen. The Q&A section of our meeting will also be recorded. Please post only in the chat function your questions to the host, to Alan or myself. And we will ask the question anonymously on your behalf. Please do not do this before the Q&A segment has begun. So we'll just listen to our lovely speaker first and then questions after. Seventh tradition. Before we share, it's time for our seventh tradition. Although we meet electronically, we still have Zoom meeting costs to pay, and we also give contributions to OA UK EB at Intergroup. Please make a contribution using the PayPal or bank details that will be entered in the chat now. Newcomers, we ask that you wait to contribute until you are sure you want to be here. Okay, so today is a speaker meeting, and we are honoured to have Kendall, our speaker, here with us today. I'm just going to see, was there a topic that was proposed?
It's hope and lifelong recovery.
How lovely, how beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, take it away, Kendall.
All right. Thanks, Rebecca. Hello, guys. My name is Kendall. I'm a compulsive overeater. And Kara, thank you so much for asking me to lead. I love you. And also just got a text and see some other familiar faces I didn't know would be here. So I'm so happy about that. Wow. I'm just honored to be here. Really, really grateful. It's amazing to turn on a meeting and see so many people from all over the world. And whenever I lead something or speak at a meeting, when I don't usually pre-plan what I'm going to say, I just ask God to help me be of service. And that's really all I can hope for. Just want to always say in the beginning, like, if you don't hear your story in me, or if this isn't what you needed to hear today, go to more meetings, because there are so many people that will have recovery that feels resonant with you. That was my experience. So just want to start us off. I'm going to read the for today. I had a really late start to my morning today, and I actually missed it. So I'm going to read it for the first time. If you've read, or for my day today, if you've read it already, it'll be a repeat. I had a 7:30 a.m. I'm in PST, so it's 11:30 for me. I had a 7:30 a.m. meeting that I have a commitment at, and I'm normally up at like 6:37, and I missed my alarm, got up at 8, ran on my meeting. So that's how today started. But it's okay. We're here. We made it. Okay. Today's the 10th. The 10th. All right. Time ripens all things. No man's born wise. Miguel de Cervantes. Patience does not come easily to the obsessive compulsive person. It's a perfect reading for me today. I have a tendency to want results now. Never mind the need to require experience. Today, I follow a path that enriches my life with experience, a path that leads me through feelings that once were too painful to contemplate, and delivers me right side up, trudging forward on my own 2 feet. As I progress, I have a sharpened awareness of the suffering of others, and I can offer help that is based on honest experience. When I feel impatient and want to hurry on with growth, to have defects removed before their time, I know that I have more to learn. Everything is in God's time. For today, my higher power offers me a way to live free of the obsession with food. I'm willing to do today's footwork and wait for the results. Wow, that was exactly where I needed to be today. I'm so glad that I opened that up. So just anyway, thank you for having me. Like I said, my name is Kendall. I'm in the middle of a move. So you guys are getting the real and raw, like boxes, office chair as my dining table. It's like that's what we're doing right now. But I just want to start by saying that this move has a lot to do with my recovery because right now I am so in the middle of so many promises coming true for me. This house that I moved into with my partner is a place beyond my wildest dreams. My relationship that I have with my partner is a relationship beyond my wildest dreams. The body size and the comfortability of being able to go in my closet and put anything on my body today and not worry about like which version of sizing I was going to be in because I've always had multiple wardrobes at one time. Like that is beyond my wildest dreams. So the fact that I'm in the move and I'm here present with you guys is just like this is what my life gets to be really big when my food and body image obsession I was gonna say metaphorically but also tangibly are smaller. When those things are smaller, my life gets to be big and I have a big life today that I really really love. So what it was like and what happened and what it's like now. And through the lens, I'm going to look to have the lens today of hope and lifelong recovery because my recovery has not been in a straight line. I'm quite young as far as when I came into program. I'm 26 years old. I came into program when I was 17. And it's where I saw a couple people on this meeting in person. And so I grew up in a home of two sober alcoholics who were not, utilizing program in the way that they do today. Like there's a lot's happened since I was a child. But what's interesting about that is when I grew up, I kept this story on like, my life is so perfect. My family's so loving. Why do I have any issues? What's wrong with me? Like I must have just been like doomed to be flawed. And now looking back, I have a lot more compassion for that young girl because there were a lot of things going on in my home that yes, there was an absence of substance, but there was presence of a lot of other stuff and a lot of inappropriate behavior. And honestly, the truth is like, I have no idea why I'm a compulsive overeater. I think, and I've seen my disease, my addiction manifests itself in so many areas. I can do it with men and sexual relations. I can do it with money. I can do it with shopping. I can do it with substances. I can do it with alcohol, with drugs. I can express my addiction in so many different ways. And I think because of the home I grew up in, it really like I veered away from some more uh drug-like substances. And so that was a blessing in a lot of ways. But I'm just here. I'm just a compulsive reader. I think there's a lot, the genetics, I don't know, but I'm here and I have that. So when I was young, I was always a very active kid. I was very I came into the world as this kid who wanted to move. I wanted to run. I wanted to play. I was joyous. I was free. I was so loved. There was so much compassion and love in my home. And I really was allowed the opportunity to chase whatever I wanted. And it was a really special thing to grow up like that. But I was this kid that was really, I'm not alone in this, like very high achieving, very like wanted to be special, wanted to be unique. And I felt like, especially as I got into my teens, if I could be the person that was the shiniest, the prettiest, the coolest, the thinnest for sure, and the most important, if I could be the person in the room that was those things, I could exhale. And it wasn't that I felt good about myself when that happened. It's just that like that brought me to baseline. Like there was no step like 5, 6, humility, like one of many. It was like I had to be the best in the room to feel okay about myself. And I developed that pretty early on. And if I wasn't feeling like that, I was the absolute, biggest piece of shit in the room. Sorry for cussing, but that's how I express my feelings. So I started out with competitive sports very young, and I got into a sport, wrestling, which I had multiple martial arts experiences when I was younger, but I got into wrestling at a very high level. I was wrestling for Team USA. I was traveling around the world competing. Now, wrestling is a weight class sport. And so what happened for me is I was being categorized in these weight classes where in order to compete at the highest level that I wanted to, I started having to lose 20 to 30 pounds at a time. So it would be like, you know, the bulimic and compulsive overeating is the biggest yo-yo for me, because it's like, I'm going to restrict, I'm going to restrict, I'm going to restrict, can't do it anymore, binge my brains out, eat everything in sight, throw up my food, start again tomorrow. I'm going to restrict, I'm going to restrict, I'm going to restrict, binge, purge. So that is my experience with compulsive overeating. I've tried pretty much everything in the book that our literature says, except for wiring my mouth shut. And I've never had surgery. But other than that, like, I mean, everything, enemas, laxatives, all of it, throwing up in planes, trains, automobiles, people's backyards, people's sinks, like everywhere. I've done it all. So what started as small levels of weight management and then somewhat normal teenage stuff, some compulsive behavior as far as the way I express myself in my life and like needing to win all the time. My therapist calls it my like who's number one complex, and we name it, and I do outside help. We put a name on her so that like we can, acknowledge her. She's in the room, she's in the body, but she's not driving the car anymore. So some of my compulsive stuff started coming up when I was younger, but the food and the body really kicked up when I started getting into competitive sports in a weight class way. Now, the beautiful thing about that for me is it kept my life on a pretty straight and narrow as far as using other substances, partying, other things like that. But what I didn't realize was that my compulsive overeating will kill me the same way that drugs and alcohol do. It just won't happen as fast, and it's not quite as violent, like in the moment. And so I get to college, I'm wrestling with Team USA, I'm doing this thing. And the biggest blessing of my life was that it stopped working, because my life looked really manageable on the outside. I mean, I was like that kid in town that was like in magazines and on TV and it was like, why would I change anything? I knew these Olympic level girls that I would travel around with who I would hear in the bathroom doing the same thing as I was. So why would I need to stop? And so the best thing that ever happened to me was I was in college and I was at this college national tournament, and or I was at this US Open tournament, and I ended up losing, and I lost really terribly. All my friends had come to watch me. It was like this big, oh my God, it was this horrible moment where I was like, I lost to these two girls. I got smashed, like just obliterated by these girls that I would normally beat in competition. And it's because the week leading up, other than God, the physical aspect of it was that I had lost about 30 pounds in 10 days. The night before, I'd been in a bathtub looking down at my legs, trying to sweat out the last couple pounds, and my legs were turning blue. And there was this moment at weigh-ins when I stepped on the scale and I went to rehydrate in this way that I normally always like, this science project. Like, I've got science projects with food. I've got science projects with weight. I can manage it all, figure it all out. That's my MO. So I figured out
minutes, Kendall.
Thank you. I figured out this way to rehydrate in a way that I did all the time. And this thing happened at weigh-ins where I was so absolutely humiliated, because I started taking in my rehydration thing after the weigh-in happened, and I made weight by like a hair. And I'd cut my hair off in the mirror as well. I mean, this was a very drastic day in my life. I'm looking at myself chopping off my hair to make weight for this tournament. Crazy. And I start rehydrating, and everything starts moving through my digestive system without my control, like into my pants, onto the floor in public. And I'm 18 or 19, and this is humiliating. And I'm like this little superstar in my community. And this is where my eating disorder is taking me. Like, I'm now in public, not able to control my bodily functions. So if I need a reminder how much of a compulsive overeater and a bulimic I am, and using exercise to manipulate it, I'll do it all. So I lost. Fast forwarding to that, I was finally on my knees in desperation enough to go to recovery. And thank God my parents knew where to take me because of their exposure in 12 steps. And they were like, here. So my dad drove me an hour from where we lived to these meetings because I was terrified of seeing anybody that I knew in person. And I started going to those meetings twice a week. My mom hated that I was driving on the highway so much when I was 18, 17, but she allowed it because of what I was doing. And I started getting a little bit of recovery. And I want to fast forward through the nitty gritty of what the first few years was like, because I had a period in 2020 that really shifted my recovery quite a bit. So that would have been like 2016, I believe, when I came in. And I initially well, first I tried working the program without a sponsor, and then I went and out and had to do some more controlled bulimia. And that got really ugly. And then I came back on my knees. When I came back on my knees in desperation, I got a sponsor. I started going to meetings. I used the tools reluctantly because I hated calling people on the phone. I did writing. I worked the steps. And I realized from my first sponsor that I had for 6 years, who I love so much, and I just talked to the other day and saw in a meeting this morning, that all I had to do, like to keep it super simple, was tell the whole and complete truth every single day to another compulsive overeater, and then take directed action. And if I could do those two things, then when I came in and listened to the lady who said that for 40 years, she had like 95% of the time complete body and food neutrality after she had been puking 15 times a day and eating and binging her brains out. If she said she could have that, and I didn't really believe it, but it gave me enough hope to keep coming back, I was taught that if I told the truth and I followed directed action, I could have that too. And that was enough for my, my on my knees, depressed 18-year-old self to follow some direction and try something different. And I clung to the steps like my life depended on it because it did, and it does. I clung to the literature. I clung to it like, God, it was everything to me. And so I started working a really great program, and my life got bigger again. I ended up having to leave wrestling. I went to a different sport, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I do now at a higher level than I used to wrestle. My life got bigger when my eating disorder got smaller. And I mean, recovery happened for me. Initially, when I stopped my bulimic behavior, I was still binging, and I gained a lot of weight, or I mean, like 20 pounds in program. I gained about 20 pounds. And then what I was told and what did happen to me for me through God was that when I learned to love the body that I was in and not try to control it, because for me, the idea that I can control my body is a complete illusion. It is a complete illusion. Like I've learned that in program. I cannot control my body. It is not my business. If I am in the steps and if I am in the footwork and I'm connecting with my higher power on a daily basis, he's got that. He's going to deal with my food and my body. That's not for me to like micromanage. And anytime I do, it gets out of control. So I have to release that on a daily basis. I was taught that. And when I practiced that, the weight came off on its own. That wasn't me. I didn't go to a baseline weight and then maintain that for a long time on my own. That was God. So fast forwarding though to the pandemic, and that was really, really hard for me. I know I'm not alone in that. Some people thrived during that time period, and that just warms my heart because I think that's probably a big reason why program continued the way that it has. But for me, I got very complacent. I slowly but surely stopped going to online meetings. I stopped calling my sponsor. I was coasting in a way that my body was maintaining a certain level of steadiness. And so I didn't feel the need to be in the meetings, and I didn't like Zoom. And it's so funny because now Zoom has saved my life once again. And what happened was I blew my life up. So that's what happens for me in my eating disorder, my compulsive overeating. Even if it looks okay on the outside for a little bit with my food and my body, I will blow my life up the same way that people do when they're on substances, on other substances, or I will when I'm on substances. And just as a side note, substances are on my abstinence. I don't belong to other 12-step programs. Like I haven't worked through them to release other substances, but I have that on my abstinence today because I know that that keeps me closer to God. And I have no business dabbling and seeing if my addictions will get serious in other areas. I know enough. Like I don't need to know, because denial, and I'll get to that, is so incredibly powerful that I don't want to have any opportunity to be in it, because it is a dark, conniving place to be. So that's what happened. I went off sugar on my own. I eat everything in moderation. I love that my abstinence will kill other people and others will kill me, because my abstinence is not for everybody, but I eat everything in moderation. That's what works for me. And and to be fair, when life gets really big and hairy, sometimes I put things to the side, like sugar or other stuff that it doesn't need to be in the equation. And I give that over to God, and I talk to a sponsor about it, and that kind of comes and goes. But that's what I had to do today. But what happened during COVID is I went off sugar on my own. I lost like 25 pounds. So I fully went into restrictive. And I wasn't throwing up my food. So for me, I was abstinent and in recovery. But I blew up my life. So I ended a 3-year relationship by having an affair. And I started being a person I wasn't proud of. I used substances with this person. I dyed my hair pink. Now, for other people, that really works. For me, it was a red flag because I had never put dye in my hair and I just did it overnight. And I was just like off to the races, traveling around the world, just being an addict is what I was doing, is being an addict. And I wasn't throwing up my food. So in my mind, I was abstinent. And this is an important part of my story because I have to pay a closer attention today to my small decisions than I used to, because that brought me completely to my knees. That put me in so much pain. I started eating everything and anything again. I yo-yoed all the way back up. This was in late 2020, early 2021, or late 2021, excuse me. And I came back to the meetings and I came back to the room and I started telling the truth again. And I switched sponsors. Again, I'm really close with my sponsor previously, but I needed a shift in me as far as accountability goes and someone I was going to rigorously get back into the footwork on. And that was early 2022. And so I never threw up my food again, but again, I blew up my life and my weight was all over the place. And I don't want to be in a life where I have to have multiple wardrobes and where I'm constantly worried about what other people think of me and I'm hiding food or I'm eating in secret or, my disease wants me in front of a TV in the dark with buckets and baskets and boxes and on my phone so that I can scroll around and look at other people, but not actually connect with anybody. That's where my disease wants me to be, isolated. And I've learned that because of that, my disease is a disease of self-loathing and isolation. And I've heard that in these rooms, that my recovery has to be a solution of connection with other compulsive overeaters, where I tell my truth and I give myself compassion and I learn how to love myself from other people. And I'm of service. I have to be doing those things every single day. I have to do those things. So what happened was, slowly but surely, the program worked again. So I got another run. I mean, thank God, because I don't know if I don't want to try and find out if it works a third time, because I got a second chance. And getting back into that for me meant that I'm now back at a place one more time of neutrality. I would say 85% of the time. I'm not quite up to that 95. I think I might get a couple percentages as the years go on. That's my hope. 85% of the time, I'm in body and food neutrality. That's insane. My relationships with my family members, better than they've ever been. My relationship with my amazing partner, someone I never would have been with before, because I just didn't know that that's what I could hope for, or what I wanted or needed. I mean, it's beautiful. And my
10 minutes
relation,
left, Kendall.
thank you so much. My relationship with sponsees, I have 3 sponsees that I work with. Better relationships with sponsees than I've ever had before, because it's not about me. I'm like the operator that helps just connect them to God. I am not the decision maker. I do a lot, and this is what I've learned from other people. I do a lot of, well, would you like my experience on this, or you just want to talk about it? Have you tried writing about it? Where's God in this? Like, ask, how do you feel? Oh, should I eat this? How do you feel? Did you try praying about it yet? Like, I do a lot of that these days because I have thank God, a renewed level of humility after the second round, through being in a very dark place of like, I actually don't fucking know. Like, I really am not in charge here. I'm really, really not. I have experience that I can share when asked, but I just don't know, and I'm watching these amazing women that I'm working with move through recovery, and their eyes are getting brighter and their energy is returning. And I'm like, wow, like I'm going to cry. Like, somebody did this for and actually not somebody, so many women before me have helped me get through to this point, and now I get to give that back in return. So that area is, financially, I'm doing better than I ever have. I mean, really, the promises have so come true for me and are every single day. And there's still a lot of hard stuff. Like, there's a lot. I mean, my dad, ended up back in a treatment center after being sober for 25, 30 plus years last year. that's a fucking doozy. That's been rough. That's been super hard on my family, right? So there's that going on. I have family business stuff going on that's exploding because I'm trying to pull out a little bit, and I moved and I have a new adult relationship and all these things, and I have other career paths, and that is really messy and not very fun and involves a lot of uncomfortable conversations and a lot of unwinding of very tight familial cycles and patterns that I work on in program and also with outside help. I mean, there's a lot of tough stuff, and yet I've never been more grateful in my life. I mean, that is a blessing. That is such a blessing. I can walk around in the world now and not have to feel like the shiniest, most important, coolest, thinnest person in the room to exhale. Like I can exhale right now with these boxes behind me and my kitchen is full of office stuff. And this thing, I don't even know what that is. Like I'm just here. Like I can just exhale and just be here and be one of many and really look you in the eyes through this little computer and feel connected to you and know that I'm not alone. And I get to walk around with that in my life on a day-to-day basis, whether I'm with other compulsive readers in that moment or not, because I know that I'm not alone. So I just want to talk a little bit about my daily practice right now and what's working for me. And it changes all the time as well. I have a pretty big life as far as like I'm traveling usually 3 to 4 times a month. I'm in front of TVs and crowds and stuff a lot where like my body has been publicly judged and people say things about it online, and that's really massively difficult to deal with sometimes. Like I choose to have this big life because I know that if I work my program, I get to also do these things I'm excited about. If I'm not in my program, forget about it. That stuff takes me out. So I do that. So what happens is my program changes consistently. But at this moment right now, what I do typically, I wake up in the morning, usually about 6:37. Lately, it's been more like 7. I've been taking the extra sleep. And I spend some time with God. So that means like also the word God I just use because it's what feels right to me. It's easy and everyone kind of knows what I'm talking about. But when I came in the rooms, I mean, even now, I think because I, as a person, am consistently changing, my relationship and my understanding of my higher power is consistently changing. So allowing that to be fluid and flexible, not locking it into place, like this is what I said it was years ago and it must stay that way, or this is what someone else uses and it must be that way. Like for me, I believe that I am a child of God and I am part of God. And what I see that as that I'm made up of the same stuff as everybody else and we're all eternally connected. That's how I feel with my higher power. And the beautiful thing about that for me is it allows me this visualization where I'm a part of this greater intelligence, where it's not something outside telling me that I've got it wrong or I've got it right. It's part of me. That's how I feel when I wake up in the morning and I sit. And so in the morning, typically I spend about an hour. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer, but typically 45 minutes to an hour. I'll do for today. I have another program, Daily Reader, that I'll look at. I do some writing. I may do some meditation. On the good days, I'm meditating. That's usually really good for me. 20 minutes is awesome, but sometimes it's 2 minutes just to get some quiet space into my mind. But 20, 30 minutes is really great when I can do that, when I make time for it. And usually when I'm doing that, I have like a very small version of my breakfast. It's like a coffee latte thing that I do that's enough to kind of get me satiated for the first couple hours of the day. And then I have another meal after that. And the reason why I plug that in there, and that's really important to me, is because one thing that I don't do anymore ever is skip breakfast. I don't do that. I don't do that because if I do that, it will set me up for a weird, it might not show up that day, but it's like in the next 48, 72 hours, something weird's coming when if I skip a meal and I wait, like, oh, it's 12, I guess I'll eat. For me, that doesn't work. So I have something while I'm doing my morning routine so that I'm not sitting there getting antsy about what I'm going to be eating later. So that really works. And then I typically have some movement early in the day, whether that's going to train because I still am a professional athlete, or I'm just outside moving. Right now, moving is moving in, and I'm like moving boxes and doing all this stuff. So that's a movement right now in the morning. Or I'm on a meeting. So I do a meeting in the morning, usually 2 mornings a week. I have other meetings that I do on in the evenings and stuff, but usually 2 mornings a week I'm doing a meeting, and that's on Zoom, which is really great. And then I do in person as well because I really really feel that for me I need in person fellowship. So it's not always a meeting, but it's like, man, God gives me the most amazing gifts. I moved out to Palm Springs, and that's a huge area for recovery for other programs, but OA since COVID is fairly small now. Like most places, it was very robust, and now it's kind of trying to get back into the swing of things. Um, but I have this amazing woman who I knew from Orange County who moved out here the same month as I did. And I was really worried about not, I mean, I was trusting in God, but I was like, I need to really put a lot of footwork into building my program out here because this is really important. The same month, someone I hadn't talked to in a year. What are the odds? She moved out here as a single woman. I moved out here with my partner. We're both the same age. That's insane. So we'll get together and we'll go to stuff. And I really am putting an emphasis on in-person fellowship. I know that for me as a compulsive overeater, I need to be seen, not just on Zoom. I love Zoom. It keeps me connected to so many people. I need to be seen in my body and in my heart, and I need to hug people. So I'm really excited to go to this retreat. I think, yeah, next week going to a retreat. I'm going to see some of these amazing ladies here and see some people I haven't seen in a while and connect. And I would say phone calls, I take a couple sponsee calls a week, just whenever they reach out, whenever it's time for them to do their step work. Obviously, they'll report into me. I do step work, I'd like to say weekly. It usually ends up being more like twice a month at this moment in time. And sometimes it's more weekly and sometimes it's once a month. But I'm always in contact about it. I send a 10th step every night, which is an email and kind of a daily review. It does not super lengthy and crazy and doesn't take me very long. But what it does is it keeps me in touch, not only with my sponsor, but also just with telling the truth. Sometimes it's pretty sparse, and then other times it's boom, like a lot is going on for me. It includes my
Last 2 minutes,
food.
Kendall.
You said
Last
two.
2 minutes.
Thank
Two.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It includes my food. It includes any place my character defects showed up, things I'm grateful for. I do an exercise inventory in there as well, because that area can get a little hairy for me. So I just plug in what I'm doing. I also recently included a social media inventory in there. That's important for me because I do that for part of my work. And also, even if I don't, I mean, can't speak for anyone else. I can easily go into social media addiction. So I keep an eye on that just in my 10 step. That's been really helpful for me to watch why I'm posting and why I'm doing things. Am I doom scrolling for an hour? Like what outside helps, that's something to me really, really helpful recently that I'll repeat because I feel like it resonates so much, is usually when I'm in any kind of addictive behavior, whether that's social media, food, staring at myself in the mirror, whatever, trying on clothes that I have no business trying on because I know that they're too small. Like anytime I'm doing something, I use the word flashback. Like I'm in a flashback. Like what painful thing is kicking up at me that's putting me into this painful thing where I'm like avoiding a feeling or I'm like whatever it is. So that word for me has been really helpful. I'll be on like scrolling and I'm like, am I in a flashback right now? Okay, why am I doing this? Is like, why am I looking at people telling myself I'm not enough? That's not very loving and helpful for me. So anyway, that's kind of what I do on a daily basis, amongst other things. But I would just say that today I feel so incredibly grateful and compassionate for that young girl who would be sitting at a table, sucking in her stomach, crossing her legs so that they were as skinny and narrow as possible, making sure you never saw me overeat, because I would always feel like I needed to explain to everybody like what diet I was on and that like I didn't want you.
Kendall.
Thank you. I needed to judge me before you judged me. And now today, I don't have to do that. Or if it does kick in every once in a while, I catch it and I tell the truth about it. And that's really all I have to do to stay in recovery and peace and love. So thank you so much for hearing my story. And I'm so happy to see all of you, and I'm excited for some questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kendall. Yay. I just love you to pieces. We're not going to open up for the question and answer section of our meeting, which is also being recorded. So please post your questions only in the chat function, and I will ask Kendall. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up now. Everyone, please post questions for Kendall, and we'll dive in. You were so amazing. I've known Kendall a long time, so I'm trying to think of like what do I want to ask her? Because I remember her face walking into the early meetings and all through. I remember her at 17. So I know. I know. Okay. Um, thank you, Kendall, for an encompassing share. Can I ask you what your concept of your higher power is?
Yeah. Okay. So my concept of a higher power, who I choose to call God, is similar to what I said earlier, as far as like I view it as this great universal energy. And I believe that it connects all things all the time. And so for me, once someone said this in a meeting a long time ago that stuck with me. It's like the line is always operating. I just have to pick up the phone. So someone also said recently that they were grateful that God is a great mystery and recovery is a great mystery, because if it wasn't a great mystery and I figured it out, I'd probably get bored and take off. And that's kind of what I did in 2020. And I wasn't viewing it as this great mystery that it is. And now I view it as a mystery. And that also gives me permission to not have to get it perfectly right, or to not have to feel perfectly connected every single day, because not every day feels exactly the same. Sometimes I feel more connected than others, but if I'm seeking and I'm in the mystery of it and I'm asking and I am, what's the word? Earnestly seeking, then I know the connection will return. And then I feel connected to everything, everyone, all at the same time. And then I'm one of many. And then I can tap into that higher level of intelligence where I write a God letter and I write back. And the words back are not necessarily my human mind. They're coming from something deeper that I feel I'm connected to, or that happens for me in meditation as well. Or when I pray, sometimes it's just help. Like I'll be having a conversation with my mom that's really difficult because we've got some really difficult stuff going on. And I'm literally in the conversation. I'm on the verge of tears and I tap in and I'm like, God, please let me speak in my mind. I'm like, God, please let me speak from my heart. Please let me come from my heart. Please help. Please help. Please help. I don't know. And when I do that, I don't know. I can't explain it. It's a mystery, but something comes in that is not my human mind. So it's a mystery to me, but I'm seeking to know more about it and to feel more connected to it. And that helps me a lot.
Thank you, Kendall. Um, Thanks, Kendall, for a great share. Did you have any struggles in early recovery being so young?
Yeah. I mean, I'm laughing because I'm like, well, I have struggles no matter how old I am. I think when I like in early recovery, it can be hard. But yeah, I mean, I came in and I was like the only teenager. And I'm like, have all these ladies that are like established and in my mind have their life together and they have husbands and kids my age. And I think the biggest struggle that I had was I didn't feel like I had my posse, like my fellowship, my girls. And I did my best, I called, I tried to go to things, and I think in-person fellowship was really helpful for that, just eating out, doing like talking on the phone. But I would say, like in other 12-step programs, you don't necessarily have that as much, whereas in OA, that's in at least where I've lived, that's been more common. I think LA area might be different, but in where I live, it's more common. So I think now I make a really concerted effort in two things. One, I make outreach calls and try to connect with women that are close to my age because we're going through the same life stuff. And then I have people that are older and have more experience that I call for other things. Like, hey, I'm dealing with this thing with my mom. And she's like, I have an alcoholic mom too. And like, we're dealing with that. So that stuff's really helpful. But I try to make fellowship with people that are close to what's going on with me, because like, we're going to like go to yoga together, go get coffee together, like do our stuff. And that helps me connect. But the other thing that I've found is I've actually really prioritized, especially in the last couple of years, my female friendships, even with ladies who are not in program, but are living a lifestyle very similar to mine. So I have a lot of not a lot, but I have a handful of really tight female friends who have a very similar lifestyle to me. And they're very like spiritually fit and they do their own other stuff. And they're, they don't use substances, the similar lifestyle that I connect with, that is technically not a program thing, but I wouldn't do that before because I was an isolator. So program did teach me to do that. And it helped me kind of bridge the gap when I would walk into the meeting and everyone is triple my age and I could, do that outside. So, but mostly I just feel grateful. I mean, I feel incredibly grateful to not have to, 17 years was enough. And also the last couple of years as I was in program, like 2020 to 2021, I never want to do any of those things again. Like very grateful that I have the opportunity to live my life in the steps. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, we got another question here. What key things did you do differently after your initial relapse to give you long-term abstinence and willingness to be honest today?
Mm. Yeah, it's so interesting about the word relapse. I've had like a experience with this word lately where I was so hesitant to use it because I was like, well, I never threw up my food again. And I don't want to take that for granted because me in bulimic behavior, there's no telling if I would have made it back to the room. So just interesting. I want to say that, but it was like a relapse of sorts. But it's funny to feel my own inner defensiveness at that word, like a kind of like push and pull. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like it's an interesting word. I'm grateful that I kept a certain level of recovery, but definitely the reality of blowing up my life is like not, that's why I tell like a pretty ruthless truth about what actually happened because I don't want to go back there again. So the major things that I did differently, honestly, it wasn't that different from when I first came in. It really wasn't. It's just that I got lazy and I got sidetracked and I got into a little bit of denial of how important those things were. And I was still like, so here are the main tangible differences. When I was out blowing up my life, but not throwing up my food, I was writing, I was praying, I was meditating, and I was still spiritually connected. But what I wasn't doing was telling the whole and complete truth to another compulsive overeater on a daily or at least multiple days a week basis. I was not doing that. I was in Kendall's world and doing what Kendall thought was best. And Kendall is a, bright, sweet, loving woman, but under the ether of addiction, she has no chance. She has no chance. So she was doing her best. I'm unpacking at this new house and I was reading through some old journal entries from that time. It was really surreal last night. And I'm like, wow, I sound smart. Like in those journal entries, I sound like this kind of talk. I know how to talk the talk. But I wasn't telling the truth on a consistent basis and I wasn't show up in meetings and I was not of service to other compulsive overeaters. And that really keeps me in the truth. When I can be of service to other compulsive overeaters, that keeps me in the truth. So having sponsees, showing up at meetings, doing step work consistently, and showing my face and my body in meetings and telling the truth. And I just know I get courage from other compulsive overeaters who do the same as far as the courage piece of telling the truth. I know that if I don't tell the truth, I will end up dead or blowing up my life. I just know that. I just have to tell the truth. There's no way around it for me. Anytime I do not tell the truth, that thing gets bigger and life gets darker and things get hairier and harder. And I don't want to have that anymore. So if I tell the truth, I'm a lot more free. So that's what gave me the courage was the pain. And I find over and over, pain is what brings me back to working a program. But over time, I get more sensitive to pain. And that's a really beautiful thing because my threshold is a lot smaller. So it takes little tiny things now to get me back into some action rather than getting the shit beat out of me and then bringing me back in. So that would be probably the difference between before and now is I don't need to get the shit beat out of me anymore by anybody else or myself.
Thanks, Kendall. Another one. Thank you for such an inspiring share. I was interested in your use of the words recovery happened to me or recovery happened for me. I thought that was really interesting. Was it just a slip of the tongue? Can you expand a little more on that? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's both to and for. Like I'm a participant in my recovery, absolutely, because I have to show up and do the footwork. And that was confusing for me for a long time. Like, where's my will and where's God's will and what's my job and what's God's job? And I just know that if I show up and do the footwork, then recovery happens to and for me. So yeah, maybe it was a slip of the tongue, or maybe I just felt like both were really relevant to mention because it is not my doing, but it is for me. So it's happening to me and for me all the time, I think, through my participation.
Nice, beautiful. All right. Thank you so much for your beautiful honesty. Can I ask when you have big feelings of discontent and irritability. How do you cope with these and how long do they last?
Oh, yes. So life has not stopped lifing, and there are a lot of big uncomfortable feelings. And right now it's like both things are true. I'm holding the paradox of two truths at once. There's a lot of beautiful stuff and there's also a lot of pain. And when the painful stuff comes up, um, oh, it's usually, I was reading this it's an outside book, but I was reading this thing recently that was like, there's no perfect equation. Usually we're kind of fumbling around trying different things that we know. And then something at some point kind of like settles. And that's definitely my experience. And I was upset for a long time that there wasn't a perfect equation because I was like, I learned all these things. I know how to meditate. I know how to take a shower. I know how to exercise. I know how to curl up with my boyfriend on the couch and just like be held and be sad. I know how to talk about stuff. I know how to call people. But sometimes the itch, it like does not get released after the first or second thing that I try. And every once in a while, my plate does get a little bit bigger. And that's not everyone's experience. And I'm hoping that with time that does go away, or I get better at practicing not having like I guess like on the list of things that bring me comfort, I hope that gets further down the line and other things work faster. I think that's probably what I see visually in my mind. But sometimes more rice goes on my plate and I'm like more uncomfortable. And then that makes me feel more comfortable. And then I sit there and I'm like, okay, all right. Well, I'm a compulsive reader. I just use that to kind of settle my feelings and I'm okay. What can I try next though, so that I don't do that again today? Because I don't think I need to do that anymore. And then I'll try to do something like take a shower, clean up a little bit. For me, exercise is huge. I go out and do some exercise. I go out and walk, call somebody, watch a movie and sit with somebody that I love. And so there are a lot or I get into service. Typically, the number one thing I know will get me out of myself, it just depends if I'm willing to do it or not, is calling somebody else, especially somebody newer to program and asking how they are. So those are I have a long list of things that I'll try, meditation as well, like so many different, but I just found that I just need to build up my list of things that work and try as many as possible. And usually it's a very uncomfortable process. I'm like itchy. I'm like, ugh, I'm trying different stuff. And then usually the relief will come into play. But I don't get to know exactly when. And I think that the further down the line food gets, the better for me. But it still does come up sometimes.
All right, next question. Thanks, Ken. You mentioned you read, journal in the morning. That lasts 45 minutes to an hour. I do the same, but only lasts 10 to 15 minutes. What else do you recommend?
Yeah. I guess I hope I have the question right. Like as far as like filling in the 15 to 45 or 15 to an hour, that's what I'm hearing. So I think over time the things get longer for me. So like I read more or I'll in the morning I'm doing my stuff that's connecting me to God, but I also have a book that's not program related that I read and like it's just time to be settled like into my body. Like it doesn't necessarily all have to be perfectly 12 steps. What I know to be true is that if I get up and within 20 minutes, I'm on my phone, checking on work stuff, doing all of that, looking at my face in the mirror, looking to see if I have any like if I'm in that in the first hour of the morning, I'm not as peaceful for the rest of the day. So I just try to fill that first 45 to an hour with stuff that feels good. And a lot of that's program related, but it's also like I'll walk around, I'll kind of tidy up and I might empty the dishwasher. I might switch the laundry over, like things that feel good to me. And then I wash my face, I do my skincare, I get dressed for the day, brush my hair, like, little things. And I put on beautiful music. I listen to like meditative music while I do this. That feels really good. I might dance, like I move, I dance, I stretch, I like move my body in ways that are loving. And I do that in the morning freely when no one's watching and nobody cares. And when I'm meditating, one thing that's really helpful when I first couldn't get past the first like 5 or 6 minutes, for me, there's two different kinds of meditation that like that I mean, there's a lot more than that, but there's two categories in my mind. One is like there's a purpose, whether I'm connecting with my heart, doing some sort of breath work, maybe there's a lot, I do a lot of outside stuff for meditation and different retreats and stuff. So there's a lot. But the other kind that's really helpful is I just sit and I imagine, I heard someone say this one time, I imagine like a ball of yarn and I'm just letting it unwind. So I'm sitting there and I close my eyes and any thoughts that come up, I'm just letting things unwind so I'm not so tight. So I don't have to do the whole thing of like, let the thought go, come back to nothing. Like that's a different, I do that too. That's different. But like sometimes like in the morning, I just need to, there's too much in there and I just let it unwind. Have any thoughts come up? I'm like, I wonder about this thing I was going to post on social media. Or, oh, I have to fire this person. That sucks. Like I'm just like going through everything. And then I go into my writing and my other meditations. Sometimes it's like that. So I think the things just get longer. And then I add more in that feel good. But it's like free time. It's like play. Like kids have a play date. I have a play date with myself and God. That's my play date. And I can empty the dishwasher if that makes me feel good. I can do whatever I want, but it's like I have no other obligations and I'm just there to play with myself and connect with God.
Thanks, Kendall. Last question. We're going to wrap up with this one. Thanks. Thanks so much, Kendall. Great to hear your freedom, joy, and recovery. Could you share your experience of working with sponsees and how you carry the message to others today?
Yeah, for sure. Sponsorship is such an incredible gift, such an incredible gift. So I mentioned I have, excuse me, 3 sponsees right now. One's not quite, I don't talk to her as much. I'm trying to like lovingly have her stay in, but I'm also not in charge. 2 of them I talk to very often. And my way that I work with sponsees is the way that I am sponsored. So there are we work the steps through a multitude of texts. We use the Big Book, we use the AA 12 and 12, and we use the OA 12 and 12. And so I use all those literatures and the step work that we do. And typically they have 2 questions or like 2 pieces of step work per week. Again, sometimes it stretches a little longer. Sometimes they do 4 at once, but ideally it's 2 a week. It's the same way that I'm sponsored. And then we meet like weekly. We'll talk on the phone and they'll read their stuff to me, or sometimes a week goes by and then, I talk to them all at the same time. But I'm always kind of keeping track with where they're at and what's going on to know that I'm talking to them usually on a weekly basis. They send a 10-step to me at night, which is the same thing that I do with my sponsor. So I do hear that from them daily in that manner. And I try to set up a meeting that we go to together weekly. So that's not always perfect, but usually like I would do a Wednesday, 7:30 a.m. meeting. And that's like a Zoom meeting that I have a commitment at that I never miss. So I try to see if my sponsees can go to that. If they can't, I have some other options that they can join me at. But I think it's important for me to see them face to face once a week when possible, because all of these people are 3 of them. They live in Southern California, but they're kind of spread out. Maybe I met one of them in Orange County, like, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, I want to see them face to face. And that's pretty much it. I'm available when needed. Like I have a sponsee that reached out to me last week because she was struggling really late at night. And I got back to her the next morning. We talked on the phone and I just say like, the line's always open. Even if I don't answer, please leave a voicemail. And I also encourage them to connect with other compulsive overeaters, because I don't want them to feel like I am the only lifeline, because I'm just a girl. Like I'm just a person. I have experience, strength, and hope to share, but I am not their program. I think that's really important. I mentioned earlier, I say, I don't know a lot. I tell the truth too. If I'm like, hey, I actually don't have experience with that, let me ask my sponsor and see if I have any, or here's someone else who has experience with that maybe you can get some experience, strength, and hope from. I suggest things that I'm suggested, whether that's doing reading and writing, whether that's someone asked me the other day, one of my sponsees, about eating a specific item. And I was like, well, why don't you write a letter to God and ask what God thinks about that and write back? And that gives you a pause. Then send it to me. We'll talk about it. It worked out beautifully. And that wasn't me determining whether she should or should not have that on her food plan, because I actually don't know. I really, really don't. So I sponsor the way I'm sponsored. I suggest practices that work for me based on what's been suggested to me. And I try to encourage fellowship. Like I think 2 out of the 3 of them are coming, or maybe only 1 are coming to the retreat next week. And I'm really excited about that. So I just try to connect people as much as I can and then help them connect to their higher power the same way that people in my program help me connect to my higher power.
Thank you so much, Kendall. If everybody wants to quickly mute and just give woo-hoo for Kendall. I was really excited to hear you today. I've heard you before, but You're incredible as usual. And I get to see you next weekend too. So um, we will now, our question and answer is now done. We will now open the chat to share our numbers for outreach. For those of you who would like to, please share your name and number. Please could all available abstinent sponsors indicate if you're available to sponsor. For any newcomers, we do have a newcomers hub after the meeting. Just raise your hand now. I believe Mary might be our newcomer greeter today, and there'll be somebody that'll jump into a breakout room with you for a little more informal talk if you have any questions. So go ahead and raise your hand now. This group also has a WhatsApp group for fellowship and inspiration. We should be putting the link into the chat box, and you can, we post things throughout the week so that we're in fellowship all week until we see each other on Wednesdays. Okay, we will close this meeting in the same way we always close a New Freedom Big Book study by reading the 12 promises of recovery as laid out in Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous on the bottom of page 83, starting with the paragraph, if we are painstaking. Thank you, Linda, for posting that now. Kendall, would you be willing to read the promises for us?
Absolutely. So Kendall compulsive reader bulimic. Okay, the promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Yay, thanks, Kendall. Thank you for joining us today. Our meetings are reoccurring on a weekly basis, and our next meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday. I think that's the 17th at 7:30, and that would be UK time. May your higher power bless you and keep you until then.